Um, Next, then, and obviously we've discussed a few wide players already, in Jadon Sancho, who's expected to arrive, and Amad Diallo, but there's Mason Greenwood as well. And after the season, which was his breakout year in 2019-20, I wouldn't say that the noise kind of tailed off, because I don't necessarily think that's a fair assessment of Greenwood. I think he simply hit the expectation of what was expected of him in 2020-21. But going into what will be essentially his third senior season at Manchester United, where do you see him? Where do you see him picking up minutes this year?
My hope is that he winds up taking on almost exclusively center forward minutes, and that sort of shows my hand with what I think is your next question, which is what's his best position, and I think it's center forward. I think ultimately he doesn't have the skill set to play wide. He's picked up some new tricks, and I think it's probably been a good growth opportunity for him playing on the right wing. He's become a much better crosser. His ball striking technique is clearly translated to that, which is great. Um, but I don't think he's natural there. He's still not a particularly creative player, and it also pulls him away from where he can get off good shots, which is again an important issue for him. Uh, yeah.
You read me like a book, Kees. It definitely was me going to ask, where do you see his positional future? But yeah, I mean, I lean towards that as well. I think his ball striking in particular, as you mentioned, is probably his standout attribute. He's just, I think I've referred to it as his shift and shoot maneuver in my notes here. That it just catches defenders out, and I don't think that's anything you can. I mean, unless you are the best of the best, I think it's very difficult for you to legislate for when you're a defender, because he's very, very good in those tight spaces. When he has been coming off the right, and I think that spoke to why he. I mean, please correct me. You're the data analyst, the data scientist, but I think that was perhaps, from my reading of the situation, why he was perhaps scoring some low XG chances, is because there were lots of bodies in the way, and it was a position where he perhaps was catching out the goalkeeper, catching out the defenders who were potentially going to block those shots, but also combined with his good ball striking technique, he was maybe overperforming what the metrics were saying.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, talking about why players exceed or underperform their expected goals is always a an interesting issue with data in football. But I think with Greenwood, you're right. The sort of shift and shoot technique certainly plays into his ability to outperform his expected goals. The two footedness helps too. Um, but I think uh, ultimately, and we found this past year, he was getting a little lucky. There was some luck involved as well,
Hmm.
um, and I think that sort of feeds into my take on why he should be a center forward. Uh, my concern is that, well, he certainly is one of the world's premier crowded out shooters. Uh, but I think ultimately, if he wants to score 20 goals in a season, 15 goals in a season, um, he's going to have to start taking better shots. Uh, as dramatic and impactful as those contested multiple defenders all around him, uh, goal scoring opportunities are, the great center forward score tap-ins, and I think that's the next big change in his game, because you're absolutely right. He has the shot creating abilities for himself that I think far more senior footballers would dream of. So he
Mhm.
sort of has to work backwards and get back to the things that are easy, and then he can leverage the things that are hard that he's already figured out.
The goal scoring fundamentals, the typical number nine trick of just being in the right place at the right time. As as simple as it sounds, I think, yeah, it's one of those things that if it doesn't come naturally, and you haven't been given the minutes in the positions where you're going to develop that attacking nous, then it is going to be something which is going to be difficult to add to his game. But I think everything that we've seen from Greenwood suggests that he is a very high potential player, and again, another option on that in that attack for Manchester United that again, can play in multiple positions, despite the fact that we both agree his future should be at centre forward. But yeah, I think he's a very, very much a high potential player and I think a lot of people, pretty much everybody who's listening to this podcast would agree with us there.